The man saw his elderly mother on the sidewalk, and his millionaire wife stopped him from approaching her. Michael Thompson felt his heart race as he walked down Fifth Avenue beside his wife. It was just another one of their evening strolls through the upscale neighborhood when something made his world stop completely. There she was, sitting on the sidewalk, dressed in simple clothes with a weary expression, was his mother, Mrs. Margaret, the woman he hadn't seen in 15 long years. Recognition was instant, even with her gray hair and the wrinkles time had etched onto her face. "Victoria, he began, but he felt his wife's hand grip his arm tightly. "Don't even think about it," whispered Victoria, her perfectly manicured nails digging into his skin through his shirt sleeve. "If you go near that woman, I'll destroy everything we've built together." The businessman froze on the sidewalk, torn between the urge to run to his mother and the fear of the consequences. Victoria Thompson didn't make empty threats. The daughter of one of New York's most influential families, she controlled every penny of the fortune they shared, every business connection that kept Michael at the top. "But she's my mother," he murmured, his voice choked. "She was your mother," Victoria corrected, pulling him away. "Now you have a real family. With me." Mrs. Margaret looked up just as they passed by. Her gaze met his, and for a second that felt like an eternity. Mother and son recognized each other across the distance that separated them. She offered a sad smile, but didn't move, as if she knew he couldn't come closer. Michael's legs trembled as Victoria dragged him away. His mother remained seated there, motionless, until she disappeared from view as they turned the corner. The heavy silence between the couple lasted all the way to their mansion in the Upper East Side. That night, Michael could barely touch the food served by their maid. His mind kept returning to that moment on the sidewalk. How had his mother ended up like that? Why was she begging on the street? "You're thinking about her, aren't you?" Victoria asked, cutting her steak with precise movements. "I can't get her out of my head," he admitted. "She looked so fragile." Victoria set her silverware down with a sharp clink. "Michael, we talked about this when we got married. Your past family has no place in our life. Period." "But 15 years, Victoria. 15 years without knowing if she's okay, if she needs anything. And you've done just fine without her, haven't you?" Victoria stood from the table. "In fact, more than fine. You've thrived, built a business empire, have a life most people only dream of." Michael knew she was partly right. When he married Victoria, he was just a small merchant with big dreams. It was through his father-in-law Richard Harrison's connections that he expanded his business and became one of New York's most respected entrepreneurs. But the price had been steep. Richard had made it clear from the start. The Harrison family didn't associate with people of lower standing, and that included any poor relatives Michael might have. At the time, seduced by the promise of a luxurious life and the love he felt for Victoria, Michael had agreed. He cut all ties with his mother, moved to an upscale neighborhood and never looked back, until today. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now continuing. After dinner, Michael locked himself in his office and tried to focus on the company's financial reports. But the words blurred before his eyes, replaced by the image of his mother on that sidewalk. He remembered their last conversation perfectly. Mrs. Margaret had begged him not to leave her, saying she didn't care about their social differences, that she just wanted to remain part of her son's life. "But I need this opportunity, Mom," he had said, still young and ambitious. "Mr. Richard can give me everything I've ever dreamed of." "And what about me?" she had asked, tears in her eyes. "What will become of me?" "You'll be fine. You're strong. You always have been. And once I'm settled, once things calm down." But the years passed, and Michael never returned. At first, he planned to reach out after a few months. Then, he thought he'd wait a year. Soon, his new life consumed him completely, and contact with his mother became just a painful memory he pushed to the back of his mind. The office door opened and Victoria walked in, wearing an expensive silk robe. "Still thinking about her?" "I can't help it." Victoria moved closer and massaged his tense shoulders. "Darling, You need to understand something. That woman is part of your past, a past you chose to leave behind when you decided to build a life with me. If you go back now, you're risking everything. But she's my mother, Victoria, the only family I had before you. And now you have me. And we have plans for children. Do you want our future kids to have a grandmother like that? Michael sighed heavily. He knew Victoria was being cruel, but he also knew she wasn't entirely wrong. Their life was built on a certain social image, and the presence of a poor, uneducated woman could complicate things. Still, he couldn't shake the look on his mother's face from his mind. There was something beyond sadness there, a resignation that made his chest ache. The next morning, Michael woke up determined to find out more about his mother's situation, but he couldn't do it openly. Victoria watched him like a hawk, and he knew any suspicious move would be noticed. During a business lunch, he barely paid attention to the new project presentation. His mind was busy trying to figure out how to get information about Mrs. Margaret without raising suspicion. The solution came unexpectedly. Betty, the housekeeper, approached him when Victoria left for the salon. "Mr. Michael, can I talk to you?" "Of course, Betty, what is it?" The middle-aged woman seemed nervous. "It's about the lady you saw yesterday, on Fifth Avenue." Michael's blood ran cold. "How do you know about that?" "Mrs. Victoria told me, and she asked me to keep an eye on you, to see if you'd try to look for her." Michael sighed. Of course, Victoria had instructed Betty to watch him. "But I wanted to tell you something," Betty continued, glancing nervously at the door. "I know that woman." "What do you mean?" "She's been coming to my neighborhood market for years, always very polite, very kind. She only buys the basics, you know. And she always asks if there's any sewing or cleaning work she can do." Michael's heart raced. Is she okay?" Betty shook her head. "Not really, sir. She lives in a tiny room near the station. I've heard she's had some health problems, but she can't afford a private doctor and the clinic is always overcrowded." "Health problems? What kind?" "I'm not sure, sir, but the bakery owner mentioned she sometimes gets dizzy, has trouble breathing." Michael felt a sharp pang in his chest. His mother was sick and he hadn't even known. "Betty, I need you to do me a favor, but it has to be discreet, understand? Mrs. Victoria can't know." The housekeeper hesitated. "Sir, I need this job. You won't lose it, I promise. But I need you to find out exactly where my mother is living, and if possible, how she really is." Betty nodded slowly. "All right, sir. But you have to promise me you won't get me in trouble with Mrs. Victoria. I promise." In the following days, Michael tried to maintain his normal routine, but his anxiety grew. Victoria seemed to sense something was different and intensified her watchfulness. She started accompanying him to more business meetings, insisting on dining out every night as if trying to keep Michael too busy to think about anything else. A week later, Betty approached him again while Victoria was showering. "Mr. Michael, I found out where your mother lives." "And how is she?" Betty's face was serious. "Not very well, sir. She has a heart condition. She needs expensive medication but can only afford it when she takes on extra work. And the place she lives, well, it's not exactly a house." "What do you mean?" "It's a tenement, sir. A small room she shares with 2 other women. There's hardly any furniture, no proper heating, and she coughed a lot when I spoke to her." Michael clenched his fists. "You spoke to her?" "I pretended I was looking for someone to mend some clothes. She was very kind, very polite, but you can tell she's not in good health." "Did she say anything about me?" Betty hesitated. "She has a photo of you on her nightstand, an old one from when you were younger. And when I accidentally mentioned I work in a house on the Upper East Side, her eyes lit up, like she had hope for something." Michael felt like crying. His mother still kept a photo of him, still hoped that one day... "Sir, may I give my opinion?" Betty asked. "Of course. That woman raised you alone, didn't she? Worked hard to give you an education, a better life?" Michael nodded. "Then maybe it's time to give back some of the love she gave you." That night, Michael barely slept. He kept imagining his mother sick, alone, living in poor conditions while he lived in luxury. Guilt consumed him. but he also knew the consequences of confronting Victoria. The next day, during a board meeting, Michael made a decision. He discreetly instructed his personal accountant to open a separate account and transfer a monthly sum to it. It would be a way to help his mother without Victoria knowing, but Michael underestimated the web of control his wife had built around him. 2 days later, Victoria stormed into his office with papers in hand and a furious expression. "What is this?" she demanded, slamming the documents on his desk. Michael looked at the papers and felt his stomach twist. They were the statements from the account he'd opened to help his mother. "Victoria, I can explain." "Explain? You opened a secret account behind my back. You're diverting money from the company." "It's not from the company, it's from my personal salary." "Your personal salary?" Victoria laughed bitterly. "Michael, have you forgotten that everything we have is in my name? The company, the house, the investments, everything. You don't have a personal salary. You have an allowance I give you." The truth hit Michael like a punch to the gut. It was true. When they married to avoid tax complications and take advantage of certain benefits the Harrison family offered, he'd transferred everything to Victoria's name. At the time, he hadn't seen a problem. After all, they were married. "How did you find out?" "You really think I don't monitor all our financial movements? I knew about the account the same day you opened it." "Then why didn't you say anything sooner?" "Because I wanted to see how far you'd go. I wanted to see if you'd betray me for that woman." "It's not betrayal, Victoria. It's my mother. It was your mother. Now she's just another stranger on the street." Michael stood up from his chair, feeling the anger rise inside him. "How can you say that? She raised me, gave me everything she could." "And look where that got you," Victoria interrupted. "You were a failed merchant when we met. It was thanks to me, to my family, that you became someone. And now you want to throw it all away because of a... Be careful what you say next. A beggar, Michael. That's what she is now. A beggar." The silence that followed was heavy and tense. Michael looked at his wife, and for the first time in 15 years, he questioned whether he had made the right decision marrying her. "Victoria, I'm going to help my mother. With or without your approval." "No, you're not." "What do you mean?" Victoria pulled another document from her bag. "I cancelled the account you opened. And more. I instructed the bank not to allow you to open any account without my signature. After all, as you said yourself, everything is in my name." Michael felt the ground crumble beneath his feet. "You can't do this." "I just did. And if you try to bypass this in any way, if you try to help that woman by any means, I'll file for divorce. And you know exactly what that means." Michael knew. It meant losing everything. The company, the house, the investments, the business connections. He'd be left with nothing, starting over at 45. "You're blackmailing me. I'm protecting you. From yourself. Because you're too emotional to make rational decisions." Michael sat back down, defeated. Victoria moved closer to him and softened her tone. "Love, I know it's hard. But you need to understand we can't save everyone. Your mother made her choices in life. If she's in this situation, it's because she couldn't manage on her own. She's in this situation because I abandoned her. You didn't abandon her. You grew. You evolved. And she couldn't keep up with that evolution." Michael stayed silent, processing Victoria's words. Part of him knew she was being cruel and unfair, but another part, the part that had grown accustomed to luxury and social status, feared losing everything he had achieved. That night, Michael went out for a walk alone. He needed to think, to breathe. Without realizing it, his steps led him back to Fifth Avenue, to the spot where he had seen his mother. She wasn't there anymore, of course, but Michael stood there for several minutes, trying to imagine how she must have felt, sitting there, asking for help. "Excuse me," a voice said behind him. Michael turned and saw an elderly, well-dressed man. "Yes? Sorry to bother you, but aren't you Michael Thompson from Thompson Enterprises?" "I am." "Oh, what a coincidence. I'm Dr. William Roberts. I'm a cardiologist." "Nice to meet you, Doctor. Actually, I wanted to talk to you about one of my patients, Mrs. Margaret Thompson. She mentioned she has a businessman's son, but said she hasn't been in touch with you for years. Michael's heart stopped. She's your patient? Yes, a very kind, polite woman. But she has serious heart problems. She needs medication and constant monitoring. How is she paying for treatment? Dr. Williams sighed. Actually, she isn't. I've been treating her at my private practice for free. I met her at the public health clinic, and her situation moved me. She had been trying to get an appointment for months, and when she finally did, she was nearly in critical condition. Michael felt a stab in his chest. Critical condition? Her heart is very weak. If we hadn't intervened when we did, she could have had a heart attack. Even now, she needs special care. Rest, regular medication, proper nutrition. Things she, unfortunately, can't afford. Doctor, I'm her son. Dr. William looked at him in surprise. You're the Michael she always talks about? Yes. But why don't you help her? Forgive me for asking, but you're clearly a successful man, and she's struggling. Michael didn't know how to respond. How could he explain that his wife prevented him from helping his own mother? How could he say he'd chosen money over family? It's complicated, Doctor. Dr. Williams studied him for a moment. Look, I don't know what's going on between you two, but I can tell you one thing. Your mother speaks of you with so much love and pride. She has a photo of you that she shows to everyone at the clinic, says her son is an important businessman who built an empire. She doesn't hold any grudges, you know. She said that. She did. Said she understands why you can't be in touch with her. That your life is different now, more important, but that she roots for you every day. Michael felt tears welling up in his eyes. Doctor, how much does she need a month for treatment? Well, with medication, regular checkups, and some tests, I'd say about $2,000 a month would be enough to keep her stable. $2,000. Michael spent more than that on a single meal at some of the restaurants he frequented with Victoria. And where exactly does she live? Dr. William hesitated. Listen, maybe it's best if you talk to her directly. I can arrange a meeting if you'd like. No, Doctor, I can't. It's complicated. I understand. But if you change your mind, come find me. Mrs. Margaret deserves to have her son back in her life. After the doctor left, Michael stood alone on the sidewalk, wrestling with the emotions overwhelming him. His mother was sick, needing medical care, and he had the means to help, but he was stopped by his own wife. For the first time since he'd married, Michael began seriously questioning his choices. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, continuing. In the following days, Michael tried to maintain a facade of normalcy, but his mind was in constant turmoil. Victoria seemed satisfied with what she considered her victory, but kept a close watch on him. During a business meeting, Michael received an unexpected call. It was Betty, and she sounded frantic. Mr. Michael, I need to speak with you urgently. What happened, Betty? It's about your mother, sir. She's been hospitalized. Michael's world stopped. Hospitalized? When? How? Last night, sir. She fainted on the street. Neighbors from the tenement took her to Mount Sinai Hospital. How did you find out? The bakery owner told me. Everyone in the neighborhood is worried. She's very loved there. Michael stood up from the meeting table, ignoring the surprised looks from his colleagues. I need to go there now. Sir, Mrs. Victoria, forget Mrs. Victoria. My mother is in the hospital. Michael left the office and went straight to Mount Sinai Hospital. On the way, his mind was filled with guilt and regret. What if it was too late? What if he lost the chance to reconcile with his mother? At the hospital, after much insistence and identification, he managed to locate Mrs. Margaret. She was in a shared ward, hooked up to machines but conscious. When she saw him approaching the bed, her eyes filled with tears. Michael, is it really you? It's me, Mom. How are you feeling? Better now that you're here. I knew you'd come. I always knew. Michael sat beside the bed and took his mother's hand. She was thin, frail, so different from the strong woman he remembered. Mom, forgive me. No need to apologize, my son. I understand everything. You built a new life, you have responsibilities. I always knew you'd come back one day. But I should have come back sooner. I should have looked for you. What matters is that you're here now." They talked for almost 2 hours. Mrs. Margaret told him about her life over the past 15 years, about the jobs she took to survive, about how she followed news of his company in the papers. Michael, in turn, spoke about his life, his business, but left out the details about Victoria's restrictions. "Son, I want you to know something," said Mrs. Margaret, squeezing his hand. "I've never regretted anything I did for you. The sacrifices, the hard work, all of it. Seeing you successful is the greatest joy of my life. Mom, I'm going to take care of you now. I'll get you out of that place. I'll pay for the best treatment. Michael, you don't have to. I don't want to cause problems in your new life." "What problems? You're my mother. It's my responsibility to take care of you." At that moment, a familiar voice sounded behind him. What a touching scene! Michael turned and saw Victoria standing at the entrance of the hospital room, her face icy. "Victoria, what are you doing here?" "Betty told me where you were. I thought it was better to come get you before you did something foolish." Mrs. Margaret looked at the elegant woman and immediately understood who she was. "You must be Victoria. Michael has always spoken so much about you." Victoria didn't respond. She just looked at the elderly woman with poorly concealed disdain. "Michael, let's go. You have an important meeting in an hour." "I'm not going anywhere. My mother is in the hospital." "Your mother is being cared for by the doctors. There's nothing you can do here." "I can stay by her side. I can support her." "Mrs. Margaret," said Victoria, addressing the woman in the bed directly, "you seem like a sensible person. I'm sure you understand that Michael has important responsibilities. He can't just drop everything because of a medical emergency." Mrs. Margaret looked at Victoria for a long moment, then turned to Michael. "She's right, my son. You have your life, your responsibilities. I'll be fine here." "Mom, no." "Michael, go. I understand." But Michael saw something in his mother's eyes that broke him in half. It wasn't understanding. It was resignation. Once again, she was being rejected, being pushed aside. And once again, she was accepting it with dignity, so as not to hurt her son. "No," Michael said, standing up. "I'm not leaving." "Michael, Victoria, my mother is sick. She's alone, and I'm staying here. If you don't leave this hospital with me right now, our marriage is over." The ultimatum hung heavily in the air. Mrs. Margaret looked between them, clearly distressed at being the cause of their fight. "Michael, go with your wife. I don't want to be the reason for trouble in your marriage." Michael looked at his mother, then at Victoria. For the first time in 15 years, he had to make a real choice between the two most important women in his life. "Victoria, can you wait outside? I need a minute with my mother." 1 minute. No more than that. When Victoria left the room, Michael moved closer to his mother. "Mom, I want you to know that I never stopped loving you. Not for a single day. I know, my son, and I love you too. And I'll find a way to help you, even if I have to." "Michael, don't do anything that will hurt your life. I'm already an old woman. You still have so much ahead of you. You're not old, and you have a lot ahead of you too." Michael kissed his mother's forehead and left the room, where he found Victoria waiting with her arms crossed. "Made your decision? Let's go home." The ride was silent, but Michael was making a decision that would change everything. That night, after Victoria fell asleep, Michael went down to his office and called his personal lawyer. "Dr. Miller, I need to speak with you about a delicate matter." "Of course, Michael. What can I do for you?" "I want to know what my legal options are regarding my assets." "How so?" "When I married Victoria, I transferred everything into her name. But now I need access to my own resources." "That's complicated, Michael. You signed a voluntary waiver. It would be difficult to reverse that." "What if there was coercion, emotional blackmail?" "It would still be hard to prove, unless you have concrete evidence that you were forced." Michael sighed. He knew he had no evidence. He had done everything willingly, lured by Victoria's and her family's promises. "Dr. Miller, Hypothetically, if I divorced her, would I get anything? Well, it would depend on the marital property regime. What was your arrangement? Complete separation of assets. Then you wouldn't be entitled to anything in her name, unless you could prove you contributed to acquiring those assets. What about the company? I founded it before the marriage. But you transferred ownership to her after the wedding, correct? Then legally she's the owner. Michael felt trapped. Victoria was right. If he confronted her, he'd lose everything. But the next morning, something unexpected happened. Betty approached him with a strange look on her face. "Mr. Michael, I need to tell you something." "What is it, Betty?" "Last night, when Mrs. Victoria came home from the hospital, she made a call. I overheard by accident." "What kind of call?" "To her father." "To her. And she said something that really worried me." "What did she say?" Betty hesitated. "She said it was time to get rid of the problem once and for all, that she couldn't let that woman complicate her plans." A chill ran down Michael's spine. "What plans?" "I don't know, sir. But she also mentioned something about an inheritance. Said her father was ready to transfer everything into her name, but there couldn't be any family scandal getting in the way." Michael began to understand. The Harrison family was planning a wealth transfer, and the presence of a poor mother-in-law could tarnish their image. "Betty, are you sure about what you heard?" "Yes, sir. And there's more. She said she'd talk to someone to resolve your mother's situation." "Resolve how?" "I don't know, sir, but it didn't sound good." Panic rose inside him. Victoria was capable of anything to protect her family's interests, and an elderly sick woman would be an easy target. "Betty, I need you to do me a very important favor." "Anything, sir. I need you to go to the hospital and check on my mother. If anything strange happens, call me immediately." "Of course, sir." Throughout the day, Michael could barely focus on work. His mind was at the hospital, imagining his mother alone and vulnerable. What if Victoria had really planned something? In the afternoon, his phone rang. It was Betty, and she sounded agitated. "Mr. Michael, there are 2 strange men here at the hospital asking about your mother." "What kind of men?" "Men in suits. They said they're from social services, but something doesn't feel right." "Why not?" "They're asking about her financial situation, where she lives, about the family, and they have what look like legal documents." Michael's blood ran cold. "Betty, don't let them near my mother." "I'm on my way now." Michael rushed out of the office and headed straight to the hospital. On the way, he called his lawyer. "Dr. Miller, is it possible for someone to force an elderly person into involuntary commitment? It depends on the circumstances. If there is evidence that the person cannot take care of themselves, and if there is a family willing to take responsibility. And what if that family has ulterior motives? That would be hard to prove. Courts tend to trust close family members." When he arrived at the hospital, Michael found Betty talking nervously with a nurse. "Where are the men?" "They left just a few minutes ago, but they said they'd be back with more paperwork." Michael rushed to his mother's ward and found her awake but clearly shaken. "Mum, how are you feeling?" "Michael, some people came here talking about transferring me somewhere. They said it would be better for me, that I'd get special care." "What kind of place?" "A nursing home. They said a family member had requested it. I thought it was you." Michael felt anger rising inside him. "It wasn't me, Mom." "And you're not going anywhere." "But they said I'm not capable of taking care of myself, that it's a court order." "There's no court order. This is a setup." At that moment, Michael saw the 2 men in suits approaching the ward. He met them in the hallway. "Can I help you?" "Are you a relative of the patient Margaret Thompson?" "I'm her son, and I'd like to know who you are and what you want with my mother." "We're from social services. We received a report that Mrs. Margaret is unable to care for herself and needs to be transferred to a specialized facility." "A report from who?" "That's confidential, but I can assure you it's from someone close to the family, concerned about Mrs. Margaret's well-being." Michael knew exactly who had filed the report. "My mother isn't going anywhere. She's under medical care here." "Sir, you don't understand. When she's discharged, she can't return to the precarious conditions she was living in. It's our duty to ensure she has a proper place. She will have a proper place with me. The men exchanged glances. Do you have the means to take responsibility for her? I do. I'm a businessman. I have the resources to care for her properly. Then you'll need to fill out some forms and undergo a social evaluation. What kind of evaluation? Income verification, housing conditions, family history, standard procedure. Michael suspected this evaluation would be manipulated to prevent him from taking responsibility for his mother. Where can I get more information about this process? Here's our card. You can reach out to us tomorrow. After the men left, Michael pondered his next move. He knew Victoria was behind all of this, but he needed proof. That night, Michael confronted his wife directly. Victoria, do you know anything about social workers questioning my mother's situation? Why would I know anything about that? Because someone filed a report. And not many people know about her condition. Michael, maybe it's a good thing. Your mother really can't take care of herself. A nursing home would be best for her. A nursing home would be best for you, not for her. What do you mean by that? I mean you want her out of the way where she can't tarnish the Harrison family's reputation. Victoria sighed. Michael, you're being paranoid. I only want what's best for everyone, including your mother. What's best for my mother is to be with her family, with me. And where will she live? Here? In our house? If necessary, yes. Victoria stood abruptly. That will never happen, Michael. Never. Why not? Because this house is mine, and I decide who lives here. It's our house, Victoria. We're married. Michael, you seem to have forgotten the details of our arrangement. This house is in my name. The company is in my name. Everything is in my name. You live here because I allow it. The coldness in Victoria's voice shocked Michael. For the first time, he saw clearly how his wife truly viewed him, not as a partner, but as a well-paid employee. So this is how you see me, as a parasite living off your charity? I see you as my husband, but a husband who needs to understand his place in our family. And what is my place? By my side, not chasing ghosts from the past. Michael went to his office and spent the whole night thinking about his options. By morning, he had made a decision. He would seek outside help. He called an investigative journalist he knew by sight from social events. Mr. Jenkins, this is Michael Thompson. I'd like to speak with you about a delicate matter. Of course, Mr. Thompson, what is it about? There's an attempt to forcibly institutionalize an elderly woman, and I suspect there are financial motives behind it. What kind of motives? The Harrison family is involved, and you know how they dislike scandals. There was a pause on the other end of the line. Mr. Thompson, are you talking about your own in-laws? I am, and I'm willing to provide details if you're interested in the story. Very interested. Can we meet today? Michael arranged to meet the journalist later that afternoon. If Victoria wanted to play dirty, he knew how to play too. But before the meeting, he received an urgent call from Betty. Mr. Thompson, your mother has disappeared from the hospital. What do you mean disappeared? The nurses said she was discharged and left with some relatives. What relatives? I didn't authorize any discharge. Sir, they had documents. They said they were authorized by the family. Michael rushed to the hospital and demanded to speak with the doctor in charge. Doctor, where is my mother? Mr. Thompson, your wife was here earlier with a court order to transfer the patient to a specialized clinic. What court order? I didn't authorize any of this. Sir, your wife presented documents proving she is the legal guardian of the patient, as you supposedly are not in a position to assume that responsibility. Michael felt his world collapse. Victoria had anticipated his moves and acted first. Where was she taken? I can't disclose that information, but I can assure you it's a top-tier facility. Michael left the hospital in a panic. Victoria had legally kidnapped his mother, using the system against him. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, continuing. Michael returned home and found Victoria organizing her jewelry as if nothing had happened. Where is my mother? Somewhere she'll receive proper care. Where, Victoria? Somewhere you don't need to know. And before you think of doing something reckless, let me explain the current situation. Victoria turned to him with a calculated expression. Those documents I presented at the hospital weren't a court order. They were documents my father obtained using his connections. Documents that grant me temporary guardianship over your mother, based on the argument that she has no capable family to care for her. This is kidnapping. This is responsible care. And it's legal. How did you pull this off? My father knows the right people in the right places, and those people understand that sometimes it's necessary to protect elderly and vulnerable individuals from unsuitable situations. What unsuitable situations? Like a son who abandoned her for 15 years and now, out of guilt, wants to drag a sick woman into a life she couldn't keep up with. Victoria's twisted logic left Michael speechless. Where is she? In a top-tier retirement home. Round-the-clock medical care, physical therapy, balanced meals, everything she needs. I want to see her. That won't be possible. Why not? Because the doctors recommended an adjustment period with no outside visits, to avoid emotional stress that could interfere with her treatment. Michael realized he was facing a perfect trap. Victoria had used the legal and medical systems to kidnap his mother, and any attempt to reverse it would look like the irresponsible act of a neglectful son. For how long? As long as necessary. And if I want a divorce from you? Then your mother will be alone in that facility because you won't have the means to care for her. And I certainly won't keep paying for an ex-mother-in-law. Michael knew he was completely cornered. Victoria had calculated every move, every possibility. You planned this from the beginning, didn't you? Planned what? You knew I'd find my mother someday, and you already had a plan to deal with it. Victoria smiled coldly. Michael, I've always known about your mother, even before we married. What do you mean? Did you really think my father didn't investigate your past before allowing us to marry? We knew about your humble background, about your seamstress mother, and we already had a plan in place if it ever became necessary. Then why did you marry me? Because you had potential. You were smart, ambitious, and with the right guidance you could become a good husband for me. But we always knew your past might be a problem, so you planned to cut me off from my family from the start. We planned to help you rise above your origins, and it worked, didn't it? You became a respected, successful man, until yesterday. Michael sank heavily into an armchair. His entire life for the past 15 years had been a carefully orchestrated lie. What do you want from me now? For you to go back to normal, to forget this obsession with your mother and keep being the husband and businessman you've always been. And if I can't, then we'll have to reevaluate our relationship. That night, Michael barely slept. His mother was trapped in a facility, isolated from the world, and he felt utterly powerless to help her. The next day, he decided to seek professional help. He booked an appointment with a family law attorney, independent of the Harrison family's connections. Dr. Wilson, I need your help. My wife had my mother placed in a retirement home against her will. Did she have legal authority to do that? Apparently, yes, but I suspect the documents were obtained fraudulently. What kind of documents? A temporary guardianship based on the claim that my mother had no family capable of caring for her. Dr. Wilson leaned back in his chair. This is complicated. If the documents are legally valid, even if obtained under questionable circumstances, it'll be hard to overturn them quickly. But there must be something I can do. You could file for guardianship yourself, but you'd need to prove you have the financial and practical means to care for your mother. And if I don't currently have those means, then the judge may rule that the current arrangement is in fact best for her. Michael explained his financial situation. Technically, he owned nothing in his name. Everything was under Victoria's control. That complicates things. The court will question how you can take responsibility for your mother if you have no assets of your own. But I can find work. I can rebuild my life. You're 45 and haven't worked independently in 15 years. It'll be hard to convince a judge you can establish yourself quickly. Michael left the lawyer's office feeling even more defeated. Victoria had calculated everything perfectly, but on his way home he received an unexpected call. It was from a woman who introduced herself as Nancy, an employee at the nursing home where his mother was staying. "Mr. Michael, I'm a nurse here at the nursing home. Your mother asked me to call you. How is she?" "Physically, she's fine, but emotionally, she's very shaken. She cries a lot, says she doesn't understand why she's here." "Can I visit her?" "Officially, no, but I work the night shift. If you'd like to come by tonight at 10, I can let you in through the back for a few minutes." Michael nearly cried with relief. "I'll be there." At 10 o'clock that night, Michael parked far from the nursing home and walked to the back of the building. Nancy was waiting by a side door. "5 minutes, no more than that," she whispered. "If they find out, I'll lose my job." Michael followed the nurse through quiet hallways to a small room where his mother sat in a chair, staring out the window. "Mum," he called softly. Mrs. Margaret turned, and her eyes filled with tears. "Michael, I knew you'd come for me." He knelt beside her chair and took her hands. "Mum, how are you?" "Confused, my son. They brought me here saying it was temporary, but no one tells me when I can leave and they won't let me call anyone. I'll get you out of here, I promise." "That wife of yours came to see me today." Michael was surprised. "Victoria was here?" "Yes, and she told me some things that worried me." "What things?" "She said you're having financial trouble, that you've lost almost everything in the company. She said you're trying to use my situation to get money from her family." Michael felt anger rising. "Mom, that's not true. Victoria is lying." "I knew it was a lie. I know my son. But she said something else that worried me even more." "What?" "She said if I don't cooperate, you could end up in prison." "Prison? For what?" "Embezzlement. She said you used company money for personal things, and the only way to avoid a scandal is for me to stay quiet here until things are resolved." Michael realized Victoria's new strategy, using his mother against him, making her believe she was protecting her son by staying in the facility. "Mom, none of that is true. Victoria is trying to manipulate you." "But what if it is true, Michael? What if you really are in trouble? I don't want to be a burden in your life." "You've never been a burden, and you never will be." Nancy appeared at the door, signaling their time was up. "Mom, I'm going to get you out of here, no matter what it takes. Michael, if you're having money troubles, don't do anything rash on my account. Promise me one thing, Mom, don't believe anything Victoria tells you. She's not trying to help. She's trying to tear us apart." "I promise, my son." Michael left the nursing home more determined than ever. Victoria had crossed a line by manipulating an elderly, vulnerable woman. The next day, Michael decided he needed a more aggressive strategy. He arranged another meeting with the investigative journalist. "Mr. Jenkins, I'm ready to tell the whole story, but I need a guarantee." "What kind of guarantee?" "That the article will expose not just my mother's situation, but the entire Harrison family's pattern of manipulation." "Do you have proof?" "I have documents, I can provide contacts, I can prove there's a behavioral pattern." "What kind of pattern?" "The Harrison family uses their influence to manipulate the legal system for their own benefit. My mother is just one example." The journalist was immediately intrigued. "Are you willing to speak publicly?" "I am. Even knowing I'll lose everything." "Why are you doing this?" "Because some things are more important than money, like my mother's dignity." They scheduled a series of interviews for the following week. Michael was going to expose the whole truth, even if it destroyed his financial life. But Victoria found out about his plans before he could carry them out. "Michael, you cancelled your meeting with the journalist," she said, stepping into his office with a dangerous look. "How did you know?" "I know everything you do, and you'll cancel because if you don't, your mother will be transferred to a far less comfortable facility." "You wouldn't do that." "I would, and I will if you don't stop this stupid rebellion." "What kind of facility?" "The kind where she won't have nurses like Nancy, willing to help disobedient sons." Michael realized Victoria knew about his late-night visit. "You're monitoring my mother. I'm protecting my family from you." "Your family? I'm your husband. You're my husband, as long as you act like one. And husbands don't cause public scandals that harm the family's reputation." That night, Michael had an anxiety attack. He felt completely isolated, with no way out, trapped on all sides. Victoria controlled the money, controlled his mother, controlled his life. But then he remembered something Dr. William, the cardiologist, had told him. His mother held no grudges, still spoke of him with love and pride. Maybe it was time to honor that love. The next morning, Michael made the hardest decision of his life. He put on his best suit, combed his hair carefully, and went downstairs to the room where Victoria was having breakfast. "Victoria, I want a divorce." She didn't even look up from her newspaper. "No, you don't." "Yes, I do, and I'll fight for custody of my mother." "With what money? What lawyer?" "I'll figure it out." "Michael, you're 45, you don't have a penny to your name, no updated professional skills. What are you going to do? Become a door-to-door salesman?" "If I have to, yes." Victoria finally looked up and studied him. "You're serious?" "I am." "Then let me explain what's going to happen. You'll walk out of this house with the clothes on your back. You won't get a decent job because I'll make sure everyone in the business world knows you're unstable and unreliable. And your mother will stay in that facility because you won't be able to take responsibility for her." "Maybe, but at least I'll sleep peacefully knowing I did the right thing." "The right thing. The right thing would be to be grateful for the life I gave you and stop being so sentimental. The life you gave me comes at too high a price." Michael walked toward the living room door. "Where are you going?" "To pack, and then I'll find a lawyer." "Michael, are you sure about this? Because if you walk out now, you can't come back ever." "I'm sure." "And your mother? You'd rather abandon her in a facility than keep the marriage that lets you care for her?" That was the question that almost made Michael give up. Victoria knew exactly where to strike. "My mother wouldn't want to be cared for with dirty money." "Dirty money? That money gave you 15 years of luxury and 15 years of guilt. It's not worth it." Michael went upstairs and started packing. He had 2 suitcases of clothes and a few personal items. That was all he owned after 15 years of marriage. As he came down the stairs with his bags, Victoria waited at the front door. "One last chance, Michael. Forget your mother and go back to being the man I married." "I can't be that man anymore. I found out he never really existed." "Then go. But remember, the door to the nursing home will close for you too. I'll make sure of it." Michael left the mansion in the Upper East Side, and for the first time in 15 years he felt free. Scared, uncertain, but free. He went to a cheap hotel and spent the night planning his next steps. He didn't have money for an expensive lawyer, but he knew a few professionals who might help him. The next day he went to see Dr. Wilson again. "Doctor, I've divorced my wife. Now I want to fight for custody of my mother." "Mr. Thompson, your situation is even more complicated now. How will you prove you're capable of caring for your mother if you don't even have a place to live?" "I'll find work, I'll rent a place." "That could take months, and in the meantime your mother remains in the institution." "So, what do you suggest?" Dr. Wilson thought for a moment. "There's a possibility. If we can prove the hospitalization was done in bad faith with hidden motives, we might get a court order to have your mother released immediately." "How do we prove that?" "We'd need evidence that the Harrison family has financial motives for keeping your mother isolated, or proof they're using her to manipulate you." Michael remembered the call Betty had overheard, where Victoria talked about handling his mother's situation. "Doctor, what if we have a witness who heard my ex-wife planning this?" "That would be a good start. But we'd need more evidence." "What if we get a recorded confession?" "That would be ideal, but it would be hard to obtain." Michael left the lawyer's office with a plan in mind. It was risky, but it might be his only chance. He called Betty. "Betty, I need your help one last time." "What do you want me to do?" "I need you to record a conversation between Victoria and someone from the Harrison family about my mother's situation." "Sir, that's very dangerous. If they find out..." "Betty, if you help me, I promise I'll hire you once I get back on my feet, and I'll pay you double what Victoria does." "How will you get the money?" "I'll work. I'll start from scratch if I have to." Betty hesitated, but agreed to help. "What exactly do you want me to do?" Leave your phone recording when Victoria has visitors or makes important calls. And let me know if she leaves the house. In the following days, Michael got a temporary job at a consulting firm. The pay was low, but it was a start. He rented a small room and began saving every penny for an apartment where he could bring his mother. Betty kept him updated on Victoria's activities. Apparently she was calm, believing she had won for good. But a week later, Betty called, agitated. "Mr. Thompson, I recorded something important." "What is it?" "Mrs. Victoria had her father over today. They talked about transferring the company to her name. And about my mother. They mentioned her too. Her father said the situation was settled, that your mother would stay where she was indefinitely, and Mrs. Victoria laughed, said you'd never get her out." "Did you record that?" "I did. And there's more. They talked about how they got the custody documents. It seems they used connections, not the normal legal process." "Betty, can you meet me tonight with that recording?" "I can, but after this I can't keep helping. It's too risky." Michael met Betty at a cafe far from the mansion and listened to the recording. It was exactly what he needed, clear evidence that the Harrison family had manipulated the system to keep his mother trapped. The next day, he took the recording to Dr. Wilson. "Doctor, we have our evidence." After listening, the lawyer smiled. "This is pure gold. We can file for habeas corpus immediately." "How long will it take?" "If all goes well, a few days. The evidence is very strong." Michael spent the next few days in constant anxiety. He was afraid Victoria would discover what he was planning and move her mother somewhere else. But 3 days later, Dr. Wilson called with good news. "Mr. Thompson, we did it. The judge granted the habeas corpus. Your mother will be released today." Michael rushed to the nursing home with the court order. When he handed the documents to the receptionist, the director was clearly surprised. "Mr. Thompson, I'll need to call and confirm this. Madam, this is a court order. You are required to release my mother immediately." Half an hour later, Michael saw his mother stepping out of the facility with a small suitcase of clothes. She looked frail, but her eyes lit up when she saw him. "Michael, you did it." "I did, Mom, and now we're going home." "Where are we going?" "To our new home. It's not much, but it's ours." During the drive to the small apartment Michael had rented, Mrs. Margaret held her son's hand tightly. "My son, you had to give up so much for me." "Mom, I gave up things that were never really mine, and I got back the only thing that truly matters." "What?" "My dignity and my family." When they arrived at the simple but clean and tidy apartment Michael had prepared, Mrs. Margaret cried with emotion. "It's small, but it has everything we need," Michael said, "and plenty of love. It's perfect, my son. It's perfect." That night, mother and son had dinner together for the first time in 15 years. The food was simple, the apartment modest, but both felt richer than they ever had. But Michael knew the fight wasn't over. Victoria wouldn't accept defeat easily, and he was right. The next day, he received a call from a law firm. "Mr. Thompson, we represent Mrs. Victoria Harrison Thompson. She is suing you for slander and defamation, in addition to demanding the return of assets she claims are rightfully hers." "What assets?" "The clothes, personal items, and other belongings you took from the residence." Michael almost laughed. Victoria was suing him for clothes. "Tell your client she can take the clothes whenever she wants. I don't need anything that reminds me of our past life." But the lawsuit had an unexpected effect. The story made the papers, and Michael found himself at the center of a controversy about elderly rights and family manipulation. The investigative journalist he had contacted earlier seized the opportunity to publish an in-depth piece on the Harrison family's methods. The backlash was huge. Public opinion was divided. Some supported Michael for fighting for his mother. Others criticized him for airing family issues publicly. To Michael's surprise, the controversy also brought positive consequences. Several people reached out offering work, admiring his decision to give up everything for his mother. A small consulting firm offered him a director position, impressed by his experience and the integrity he had publicly demonstrated. "Mr. Thompson," the owner said, "we're looking for someone with business experience, but above all, character. You've proven you have both." Michael took the job and began rebuilding his career from scratch. It was humbling in some ways to have to prove himself again at 45, but it was also liberating. Mrs. Margaret, meanwhile, was recovering well. With the proper medical care Michael arranged through his new company's health plan, her heart condition stabilized. Mother and son settled into a simple but happy routine. Mrs. Margaret cooked, Michael worked, and every night they ate dinner together, talking about their day. It was during one of these conversations that Mrs. Margaret made a revelation that changed everything. "Michael, I need to tell you something about the Harrison family." "What, Mum?" "I knew Victoria's father a long time ago, before you were born." Michael stopped eating. "What do you mean you knew him?" "Richard Harrison was my first employer when I was young. I worked in his family's home as a maid." "Mom, why did you never tell me this?" "Because it's a painful story, and because I didn't want you to know how they treated me." "How did they treat you?" Mrs. Margaret took a deep breath. "Richard Harrison harassed me for months. When I refused his advances, he fired me and even spread rumors about me to other wealthy families. Because of that, I never got domestic work again." Michael felt his blood boil. "And that's why you had to work as a freelance seamstress?" "Yes, and that's how I met your father, who also worked independently. We were both outcasts from society in one way or another." "Mom, does this mean that Richard Harrison knew exactly who I was when you married his daughter, and that he probably planned all this as a form of revenge?" The revelation left Michael stunned. His entire life had been manipulated as part of a revenge game that started before he was even born. "Why didn't you tell me this before?" "Because you were happy. At least I thought you were. And I didn't want to ruin your happiness with stories from the past." "But Mom, this changes everything. I can use this information against them." "Michael, I don't want you to seek revenge. We've already suffered enough because of this." But Michael couldn't forget what he had discovered. The Harrison family had destroyed his mother's life decades ago and then used him as a pawn in a cruel revenge game. He decided to see Dr. Wilson again. "Doctor, I've uncovered new information about the Harrison family's motives." After hearing the full story, the lawyer leaned back in his chair. "Mr. Michael, this completely changes the legal context of the case. If we can prove there was a pattern of family persecution spanning decades, we can file a much broader lawsuit." "What kind of lawsuit?" "Emotional damages, systematic harassment, manipulation. We can demand compensation not just for the last few months, but for everything your family has suffered." "But I don't want their money." "It's not about money, it's about justice, and about stopping them from doing this to others." Michael considered the lawyer's proposal. Part of him wanted to forget everything and live in peace with his mother. But another part knew the Harrison family would keep using their power to manipulate and harm vulnerable people. "Dr. Wilson, if we file this lawsuit, what are our chances of winning?" "With the evidence we have, I'd say they're very high, especially if we can find others who've been wronged by the Harrison family over the years." "And how long would it take?" "A few months, maybe a year." Michael made his decision. "Let's move forward, but on one condition. Any financial compensation we get will be used to create a support fund for vulnerable seniors." Dr. Wilson smiled. "I think your mother would be proud of that decision." The lawsuit went better than expected. When the full story came to light, several others who had been harmed by the Harrison family over the years came forward as witnesses. The public pressure on the family was intense. Richard Harrison, now elderly, saw his reputation publicly destroyed. Victoria tried to distance herself from her father, but she was too involved in the scheme to escape the consequences. The company under her name became the target of an investigation for questionable business practices. Several contracts secured through influence were cancelled. Within 6 months, the Harrison family was financially ruined and socially ostracized. Michael, on the other hand, was thriving in his new career. The company he worked for grew rapidly, partly due to the positive publicity it received for hiring the man who sacrificed everything for his mother. A year after the whole saga began, Michael received an unexpected call. It was Victoria. "Michael, Can we talk? About what? About everything. Can we meet? Michael hesitated, but agreed to meet her at a public cafe. When he saw her, he was shocked. Victoria looked very different, thinner, with dark circles under her eyes, wearing simple clothes. The elegant, controlling woman had disappeared. "How are you?" he asked, genuinely concerned. Not well at all. I've lost everything, Michael. The company, the house, my friends. Even my father won't speak to me anymore. I'm sorry. Are you really? Michael thought about the question. I am. Not for what you lost, but for what you chose to become. I came here to apologize. Apologize. For everything I did to you and your mother. I was wrong. Completely wrong. Why are you telling me this now? Because losing everything made me understand what truly matters, and I threw away the one thing that could have made me truly happy. What? A real marriage. With you. Michael studied her for a moment. Victoria, you didn't love me. You loved the idea of controlling me. Maybe at first. But over the years, I learned to truly love you. And that's why I became so desperate when you started pulling away. You had a strange way of showing love. I know, and now I understand it was out of fear. Fear of losing you to your old life. You lost me when you tried to stop me from loving my mother. Victoria began to cry. Is there any chance? Any possibility we could start over? Michael felt sorry for her, but knew some bridges had been burned forever. Victoria, you did unforgivable things. You manipulated an elderly, sick woman. You used your power to hurt innocent people. I can change. Maybe you can, but not with me. What we had ended the moment you threatened my mother. What if I apologized to her too? She's already forgiven you. What do you mean? My mother doesn't hold grudges. She understands you were raised in a family that taught you the wrong values. But forgiving doesn't mean forgetting or going back. Victoria was silent for a few minutes. What will you do now? I'll keep living, working, taking care of my mother, being happy in simple ways. And me? You'll find your own path, but it'll have to be without me, to be. After that meeting, Michael never saw Victoria again. He heard through others that she had moved to another city, found a simple job, and was trying to rebuild her life away from the spotlight. 3 years after the saga began, Michael was in a very different place in his life. He had become a partner at the company where he worked, bought a small but comfortable house for himself and his mother, and found a balance between professional success and personal happiness. Mrs. Margaret, now 73, was in stable health and actively involved in senior groups. She had become an informal counselor of sorts for other families going through similar struggles. One evening at dinner, she made an observation that stayed with Michael. Son, have you ever thought that maybe all this happened for a reason? What do you mean, Mom? Maybe you needed to go through this experience to discover who you really are. And who am I? A good man. A son who puts family above money. A man of integrity. I've always been this way, Mom. No, my son, for the past 15 years you'd forgotten that. Money and social status had changed you. Not completely, but they had changed you. Michael reflected on his mother's words. She was right. The man who had married Victoria was ambitious and willing to make moral sacrifices for success. The man now sitting at the table was someone who put family values above all else. You're right, I had lost my way. But you found yourself, and now you're a whole man. Whole? You have success, but success built with honesty. You have money, but money earned through honorable work. And you have family, the family that was always here, waiting for you. That night, Michael went to bed thinking about how life can take unexpected turns. 15 years ago, he thought he had achieved everything. In truth, he had lost what mattered most. Now, with far less money and social status, he felt infinitely richer. The following month, Michael received an unexpected offer. A major company was interested in buying the consulting firm where he worked, and they wanted to keep him as the general director of the operation. The offer included a very high salary and extraordinary benefits. It would be a chance to return to the top of the business world. "What do you think, Mom?" Michael asked during dinner. "I think you should accept if that's what you want. But wouldn't it be like going back to who I was before?" "No, my son. Before you pursued success to prove something to others. Now you've already proven to yourself who you are. If you accept, it'll be because you want to grow professionally, not because you need the money or the status. And what if power corrupts me again? It won't, because now you have a solid foundation, clear values, and a family that will always remind you of what truly matters." Michael accepted the offer, but with one condition. He wanted part of his salary to be automatically directed to the senior support fund he had created with the compensation money from the lawsuit against the Harrison family. 2 years later, Michael was once again one of the most respected businessmen in New York. But this time, his reputation was based not just on financial success, but above all on integrity and social responsibility. He often gave talks on business ethics and family responsibility. His story became an example of how it's possible to start over and find true success. Mrs. Margaret, now 75, had become something of a local celebrity. She appeared on television shows, speaking about senior rights and the importance of family. "Mom, don't you ever get tired of telling our story?" Michael asked one day. "I don't get tired because I know our story can help other families avoid making the same mistakes." "What mistakes?" "The mistake of thinking money is more important than love. The mistake of believing social status is worth more than dignity. The mistake of forgetting where we came from." During one of Mrs. Margaret's talks, a woman in the audience approached her afterward. "Mrs. Margaret, may I speak with you?" "Of course, dear. I'm Victoria." Mrs. Margaret was surprised but showed no hostility. "How are you, dear?" "Better than I deserve to be. I heard your talk today and I wanted to thank you." "Thank me for what?" "For forgiving me and for teaching me, even without knowing it, an important lesson." "What lesson?" "That true wealth lies in family, in love, in simplicity. Things I always had but never knew how to value." "And now you do?" "Now I do. And I'm trying to rebuild my life based on those values." "How is your father?" "Isolated. Bitter. He could never accept the change. But I chose a different path. I'm happy for you, dear." "Mrs. Margaret, I know I have no right to ask this, but do you think Michael could ever forgive me?" Mrs. Margaret thought about the question. "Forgiveness isn't something you earn, my daughter. It's something you give. Michael has already forgiven you. But that doesn't mean the consequences of your actions will disappear. I understand. I just wish he knew I've truly changed. He does, and that's enough." A few months later, Michael learned through mutual acquaintances that Victoria had married again. This time to a simple, hard-working man with no grand financial ambitions, and she seemed genuinely happy. "Good for her," Michael said when Mrs. Margaret shared the news. "You don't feel anything?" "I feel relief. Relief knowing she found her path to happiness, and gratitude." "Gratitude?" "For everything that happened, because it brought me back to you and taught me who I really am." 5 years after the day he saw his mother on the sidewalk of Fifth Avenue, Michael was in a very different place. He was the CEO of a thriving company, lived in a beautiful but not ostentatious home with his mother, and had found balance between professional success and personal happiness. But most importantly, he had reclaimed his identity, his values, and his family. One Sunday afternoon, as they had lunch at home, Mrs. Margaret made an observation that perfectly summed up their journey. "Michael, do you remember when you were little and I told you the most important thing in life was to have peace in your heart?" "I do." "Now do you understand what I meant?" Michael looked around. The house was comfortable but simple. The food was homemade, made with love. Their conversation was about everyday things, free from big worries. And yes, his heart was at peace. "I understand, Mom. Perfectly." "Then was everything we went through worth it?" "It was, because it brought me back home." "And where is your home, my son?" Michael smiled, took his mother's hand and answered, "My home is wherever you are." The end. And you, dear listener, what did you think of this story of redemption and family love? Do you believe Michael made the right choice in choosing his mother over wealth? Share your thoughts in the comments. We love hearing different perspectives on these life stories. If this narrative touched your heart, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel for more moving stories like this one. Thank you for joining us.